Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for part one of a four-part series of our joint initiative with Exim Bank as well as the Ministry of Trade, highlighting the importance of exporting, right? And welcome to the world of exports, our webinar series. So, we're going to keep the introduction short and get directly into it. It's only 1 hour webinars. So thank you for joining us. A bit of housekeeping, you wouldn't be able to unmute your mics. So feel free to, when we get to the presentation stage, if you have any questions, feel free to use the chats from there. So before I continue, I want to bring in our partner for the webinar, Mr. Sheldon Thomas, the Manager for Marketing and Business Development, just to kind of bring some greetings on behalf of Exim Bank. Sheldon?
Thank you, Shadron. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Shadron Collins, General Manager, Youth Business, Trinidad and Tobago. Ms. Michelle Lau Chu Tong, Facilitator. Participants, it's a pleasure to see so many of you on the webinar at this time of the day. All right, so hats off to you. So the Exim Bank is delighted to be a program partner for this Export Readiness Workshop Series, a timely initiative developed by YBTT to equip businesses with the knowledge and skill necessary to thrive in the global marketplace. The Exim Bank's mission is to increase national foreign exchange earnings, and we are committed to offering finance solutions tailored to the firms in the private sector to enable them to boost their export capacity. We have been working closely with our clients and are seeing the continued efforts of various ministries, business support organizations, government agencies, and growth-oriented companies. According to a recent release from the Ministry of Trade, our non-energy exports have increased from 15.5 billion in 2021 to 17.4 billion in 2022, which represents a 12% increase in export earnings. Despite these positive steps in the right direction, the energy sector remains the largest contributor to exports, accounting for approximately 75% of exports. There is more work to be done by all the relevant stakeholders to boost the non-energy export sector in terms of export generation. One major initiative that we at the Exim Bank are currently formulating to help our private sector firms boost their export capacity is through the Catalytic Fund. When fully implemented, the fund will enable export-oriented companies in both the manufacturing and the service sector to access financial support to generate increased exports and earn more foreign exchange. Significant progress has been made thus far with the development of the fund, and we look forward to it being implemented to the benefit of the export-oriented sector firms. Apart from a core role as an export credit agency, we firmly believe in the value of appropriate educational initiatives geared towards greater awareness for our local firms and how they can fully capitalize on their export potential. As Benjamin Franklin once said, an investment in education pays the highest returns. Hence our strong support for this particular workshop and work series. Through the expertise of the facilitator, we expect that many of the businesses and entrepreneurs at today's session on developing your export potential or capacity to gain tremendous insights and practical tips on how to become a more export-oriented business facility. We look forward to an interactive and engaging first session to the Export Readiness Workshop Series, and I thank you as I bring remarks from your sponsor, the Export-Import Bank of Trinidad and Tobago Limited.
Thank you, Sheldon. And they say about information, the best use of information is to share it, right? And that's why we took the initiative to have a free export readiness workshop to get more persons involved and even prepared. So even through this workshop, you might even get a checklist of things that I need to do to get ready, right, to the world of exports. So without further ado, I want to bring in our facilitator for today, very knowledgeable about the world of exporting, I must say. And she's going to guide us into the session, developing your export capacity. Michelle?
Hi, everyone. Hi. Thank you very much, Shadran. Sheldon, thanks for sharing so much. It's wonderful to hear what the Exim Bank is doing with that new fund. And more than that, the focus is on both manufacturing and services firms. So that is news to my ears. And I really hope you out there that, you pay particular attention. And as they continue to develop the fund, you keep your ears to the ground to see how best that can benefit your company. So today, welcome everyone to the world of exports. This session today, let me just get my slide show starting. Right, and to remove this. Yes, so happy, as I said, to be here. Happy to have so many of you all on this webinar this afternoon. As Sheldon would have mentioned, we have 1 hour, as was previously advertised. There's a lot of information to be shared, and we still want an opportunity as well to take some questions on board. With that being said, your questions can be placed in the chat, and Sheldon will basically field those questions closer to the end of the presentation. If I can't take questions in between, I will let you know, and you can possibly put on your microphone and we can have that dialogue going. So this is the first session of a 3-part series. And today we are talking about developing your export potential or capacity. So like with any firm, export readiness is very important. And as a company, you have to gauge your export readiness. Exporting is not something that you think about last night and then you get up Monday morning and you just jump into it. Maybe you can, but the fact of the matter is, if you want exporting to be sustainable, it's a long game and it requires a lot of resources and time as part of your resources as well for you to be successful. So achieving success in the exporting arena is certainly something that is possible, and it is very possible for small firms as well. So let's get going today. Just a little bit about me, but I know that if you would have registered, you would have seen some information there. But I am a business and export coach. I have been treating with the world of exports for the last couple of years, being the main export coach for the Export TT's Accelerator program from inception, and we continue to go at it. So I have a wealth of experience as it pertains to not just exporting, but in terms of business development. I would want to send persons this presentation at the end of the 3 sessions. I will compile all of the presentations together, submitted to Export TT, sorry, not Export TT, to YBTT, getting my TTs mixed up, and they would submit the presentation to all of the participants. So what are we talking about today within the time that we have allotted is exporting. What's in it for you? The challenges of exporting. Are you indeed ready to export? That's the big question that you would need to answer after today's session. Assessing your export potential. There's a lot of questions that is being asked as it pertains to you getting ready for exports as you turn the spotlight inward on your business in terms of you gearing up for the export markets. And then, of course, developing your export plan. An export plan is your roadmap as it pertains to exporting. Any company that is interested in utilizing exports as a growth strategy for their business, you can't do that just winging it. You need to have a roadmap very similar to your business plan, and I'll touch a bit more on what is required in terms of this export plan later on. And then we will just do a quick summary of what we have been discussing, and then we have a Q&A. So without further ado, I would get into it. I have 2 slides here. I just wanted to put out there before you, because this is how I do my sessions. In terms of this webinar, it's geared towards business owners who are considering exporting, who is in the early stage of the exporting journey, or even if you're an established exporter, but you have fallen off the wagon due to COVID or whatever it is. These series of sessions is geared towards introducing frameworks and tools that you can apply in your business almost immediately. But bearing in mind, this is not a silver bullet. In terms of a solution for your business, you have to put in the work. Effort is key, because only then you will get the results that you are looking for. Some of the goals that I would want to achieve is basically empowering you as a business owner in terms of seeing exports as a growth strategy for your business. I'm also seeking to increase your focus on exporting, which sets the framework for the development of your export plan. And then, of course, building your confidence for you to adjust and improve your business to get it and have it align as to all of the many different tasks that you need to do in order to get your company prepared for exporting. And then implementation of tools and frameworks for exporting success. So whatever it is that you are able to glean from these sessions, you are able to implement it within your business and just sort of advance the exporting thrust or your export development agenda in terms of growth for your company or business. So doing business outside Trinidad and Tobago can be a complex undertaking. Global markets offer you access to new customers, revenues, and ideas. They also provide you with the flexibility to spread your business risk and extend the life cycle of your products. So you have products currently in the domestic market. Maybe your sales have been increasing. You have been seeing an upward trend. You may have gotten inquiries from companies abroad, or individuals that are, or even distributors that are looking to increase their portfolio of products. These all are signs that you just may be ready to look at preparing and planning for entering export markets. And you gain so much in terms of exporting. So new customers, yes, a new market for your customers, of course, increased revenues. And then, of course, there's the knowledge and experience that you are going to gain in terms of the export markets. So what's in it for you? And I sort of touched on that just now. As a company, Trinidad, as a company as well. And of course, all of us know that Trinidad and Tobago has been a trading nation for several years. Liberalization of global commerce continues, and more Trinidad and Tobago companies are joining the international market every year as it pertains to exporting. The majority of times, especially in our local manufacturing sector, we tend to go regionally first, operating within CARICOM because of the benefits that are derived in terms of the tariffs that are available there in order for us to compete and to compete well. So our non-energy exports, as was stated before by Sheldon, has been growing and growing significantly. And if you have been traveling to the region, you would see a lot of our products on the market, regardless of sector, really. Food and beverage is a big one regionally, but there are many other sectors where you are seeing Trinidad and Tobago goods. And also in terms of the services as well is now very much out there in terms of the regional market. So what can you gain? What can you benefit from getting into exports? And increased sales certainly is a part of it. And as I mentioned, if you are doing well in terms of your domestic sales, then that might be an indication for you to look external to the local market in terms of getting your product out there. But looking out there is not simply just getting an inquiry. There is a lot of market research that needs to take place, and we will be touching on that during the third session. Higher profits, definitely. We all want that as a business. It's why we are in business, right? If you can cover your fixed costs through domestic operations or other types of financing, your export profits can grow very quickly. So that's one of the reasons as why in terms of higher profits that you may want to look at. You may also be able to achieve economies of scale. So when you have a larger market base, you can produce on a scale that lets you make the most of your resources, and that will allow you to achieve economies of scale. Reduce vulnerability, most definitely. If you're able to diversify into new markets, you can avoid your dependency on a single or the local market only, so that if there is any sort of domestic downturn, you have other markets now that you can grow your products and services in, and you'll still be able to keep your business running. New knowledge and experience, right? The global marketplace abounds with new ideas, approaches, and market conditions that could also prove quite successful for you in Trinidad and Tobago. And of course, we can achieve global and domestic competitiveness in that regard. But now that we have a bit more understanding as to what we can gain if we venture into the world of exports, we also have to recognize, like with anything else in business, there are going to be challenges. And before we can overcome those challenges, we have to recognize what some of those challenges are. So in terms of exporting, and where you have increased sales as a benefit, you can also have increased costs, right? And increased costs could simply be that the fact that you are entering a new market and you may very well have to modify your current product to enter that market in order for you to gain access to that market. And in modifying that product, I mean, maybe you have to slightly change the design to, to ensure that it's accepted locally in the export markets. So in terms of your packaging, you may have to make some changes there. There may be label requirements, language requirements. These are the sort of things that I'm referring to. And all of these things are going to have a cost attached to it. So there is increased costs. So your budgeting in terms of your export budgets is something that you will clearly have to work on as you get down to the nuts and bolts as it pertains to your market research. And then again, your level of commitment. I tell companies all of the time, if you're looking at exporting is a long game. It's not that you jump in today and you become successful tomorrow. You must have the resources required in order for you to become successful. And that includes, the capital, financially, you need to have the funds. You need to also have the expertise internally to your business, meaning the human resource requirements. You have to have a competitive product. Yes, and you also have to have a product that when you put it into the targeted export market, it can grow and it can thrive. So your market research capability also has to be on point, right? Language and cultural differences is very, very real. We are in an we belong to the English-speaking Caribbean. If we are looking at getting into the Latin American markets, we are going to have language barriers there. Do you have anyone on your staff that speaks Spanish, or understand the nuances and the cultural sensitivities as it pertains to doing business in Latin America? And the same for Dutch markets. Let's say you are looking at Suriname, for instance, or for whatever reason, if you're in the services markets, the ABC Islands, Aruba, Curacao, and Bonaire, maybe markets that you may want to target as well. So you have to understand, the cultural sensitivities that exist there before you can actually get into the markets. Yeah, the paperwork is pretty significant, but then again, you're not doing this on your own. You're expected to have a team. If you don't have a team, then you have to begin building out one as well. And that's not just for the export market, but also in terms of locally, to ensure that you're making the right steps in the direction of exporting. You have to be accessible. If you're getting into exports, you're talking most likely, if it's products, you're gonna have a distributor most likely in one of your target countries, your export markets, and you're gonna have to be accessible to that person on a continuous basis. Is it that you now need to have within your company a dedicated person, maybe an export coordinator? If that role does not exist, it may be a role that you need to create, because getting the distributor in itself sometimes it's very difficult, but getting the distributor is only the first step in the race. The fact is you have to ensure that that relationship now works for both of you all. And part of that means that the communication and the way in which you communicate on an ongoing basis is workable. It is successful for both you and the distributor. If not, your product is not going to get the kind of recognition that it needs in the market. The sales are not going to increase, and most likely you will not have that relationship in the long term. And then, of course, and one of the biggest challenges with exporting is competition. Competition is real, but you also need to understand the dynamics of the export market. In terms of market competition data, and I'm not getting into any of market entry strategies or market research today at all, but keep that in mind. There's a significant component as it pertains to market research that you need to, get your feet wet as it pertains to that to ensure that you can achieve success in your target export markets. Now, I thought it best to make this statement and decide exporting goods and exporting services are really two different challenges here. When we're talking about exporting as it pertains to goods, we are talking about packaging and customs and physical delivery. But however, when we are talking about services, we need to have, if we are a consultant, we need to look at work permits to work within the destination. If we are doing it online, we need to understand the cultural diversity of the target markets. We need to ensure that the certifications that we have can be applied within that market. Can we speak the language? Can we do in-market visits to meet with our counterpart or partner or strategic alliance partner within the markets? So services and goods are basically, operated differently as it pertains to exporting. And I will try my best to try and bridge the gap with both of them during the market entry strategies, because even there, it is a little different for when you're looking at market entry strategies for goods versus services. Okay. Now, the big question for today we are talking about developing your export potential or capacity. And the big question is, are you ready to export? And how do we go about planning? So just in case you may not be aware, an export-ready business is one that has the capacity, the resources, and management to deliver a product, a marketable product or service on a global scale at a competitive price. That's it in essence. When you think about your business, think about where you are at, and think about where you want to go. I am sure off the top of your mind, without any real investigation into your company, you can start to see the gaps as the owner of the company, in terms of capacity, in terms of resources, in terms of human resource requirements, even in terms of your product as well. So these are things that you need to think about, because your first step is to think about the resources and knowledge your business already has. So before you can, in terms of assessing your export potential and where you are right now, you have to start to think about where you are and what do you have right now within your business. All right. So some of these key questions, normally when you are getting ready to export, you will really complete an export readiness assessment or questionnaire. What I'm doing today is also trying to put some of those questions out there to you, providing you with some examples and so on, so that you get a good understanding, so that when you're answering the questionnaire, you're a bit more informed as you begin to lay the groundwork for your export development. So some of the questions are clear. Do you have clear and achievable export objectives? What are you looking to achieve? When you look at your sales locally and looking at an export market, are you able to project in terms of what's, as what's next. A realistic idea of what exporting entails and the timelines and results. Well, you're going to be getting that from here. And openness to new ways of doing business. Advancing your export development agenda, entering new export markets means that you have to be very open to new ways of doing business. The way that we do business in Trinidad and Tobago, even within certain countries and in CARICOM, it still is a little different. And you have to understand how that works, right? So doing business in Trinidad might be a little different as it pertains to goods when you're doing business in Jamaica. And there are a lot of local manufacturers can give you some, what their experiences have been, in terms of the Jamaican export market as it pertains to goods in particular sectors. And that's just an example in terms of you trying to understand in-depth, understanding of the potential target market that you will be looking at. The next thing that you have to look at, and I mentioned before, is your human resource requirements. Maybe some of us on this call are solopreneurs, maybe some of us are actual SMEs who have been operating for 3 years plus, or maybe some of us are even in that startup sort of phase. The fact is, if you are looking at exporting, your human resource requirements is going to be key. The people that you either bring on board as you grow and develop your business. If you look at marketing, for instance, bringing someone on board with international marketing experience to actually do the positioning of your product within the targeted export market is going to be critical to your success in that particular market. Yeah. Another thing is the capacity to handle extra demand associated with exporting. If it is that you are a manufacturer, for instance, in the local markets, you're already servicing the domestic market, our local market here. Do you have spare capacity within your operations to actually fulfill orders in the export markets that you're targeting? That is an assessment that you need to do within your business. If you're a service company, it's quite similar. If it is that you're an architect or an accountant or an attorney and you're looking at services in the region, do you have the additional staff in order to service your clients in these other markets as well, right? How do you respond to your customers? What type of, if you don't necessarily need a human, but what type of system do you have? I tell companies all the time, businesses run on systems. What is the system for you to handle customer inquiries? Remember, if you are looking to go into an export market, the distributor or the potential partner in terms of your service, they are going to be looking to see what is your responsiveness like, because that is part of the criteria in determining whether or not I want to do business with this particular company, right? The personnel that you have from a human resource perspective, or even for yourself, do you understand? Do you understand the cultural nuances as it pertains to the target markets? And do you have international marketing skills, right? What about language? Can you speak the language? Yeah, and of course, do you have a local contact, a go-to person in that market? And that could simply be a sales agent. For the majority of time, as a product-based company, you tend to look for distributors first. It's the quickest market entry method into a new market, right? In terms of services, what you're trying to do is to find a partner online, a partner in the market that you can work with closely, but there must be criteria in terms of compatibility, in terms of fit, and a whole host of things in terms of what you need to understand as well. So local contact is important from a human resource perspective. Or do you have persons within your company that has that kind of network in the markets that you're targeting for exports? Financial and legal resources. As you look at exports, this is a must. Do you have the capital or the lines of credits that you would probably need in terms of your own production operations and expansion? And not just in terms of production, you also have to look at your product itself. If you have to modify packaging, if you have to change the packaging, upgrade the packaging for whatever reason, if you have you know, the kind of resources that is required just to, you know, for raw material cost as well, you know, so that you have sufficient stock. So when an order comes in, you can't tell the distributor, well, you know, give me, you know, 3 weeks. You know, I have an order on the way. Do you also have, you know, an accountant that's on board as part of your human resource requirements? And they don't necessarily have to be an accountant established in your business, but one that is outsourced, that you have access to, that has the knowledge of, you know, doing business in export markets. That can provide, you know, that could be a great resource for you as well. And then if you look on the services side, on the product side as well, you know, intellectual property rights, and as well as intellectual property protection within the market, within the export market. More than that, have you done anything about that even locally as well? Right, so a lot of things for you to think about as you look at determining or developing your export potential or capacity. And then this is one of the areas that many people try to, you know, not try, but stumble, you know, your product, a product or service that is potentially viable in your target markets, right? When you talk about competitiveness and about, you know, actually selling your product that is doing okay, I guess, in the domestic markets, or even doing great, when you have to look now at selling this product in an export market, remember that export market, even similar to your local market, is going to have competition, not just from the locals within the export market, but also internationally. So can your product match up? What is how unique, what are the unique features of your product, right? Is it that you have, the product has a patent, you know, there is some technological advancement as it pertains to the product. What is it that makes this product so unique that it can, when you put it into that export market, it has that advantage, competitive advantage, just to do well. Now, the product is just part of it. The research still have to be done as it pertains to the market competition and what is happening on the ground. But those are some of the things that you have to think about. I did a session not too long ago, and you know, asking companies about what makes their product unique. And it's, you know, it's like, well, it can be used, it's being used. My customer says the product is unique. Yeah, but what is it? Tell me, you know, what is it about this product that is unique? You know, is it that you have, is it convenient? Is it convenient? Is it affordable? Is it that I can get this hassle-free? Do you have after-sales service attached to it? You know, do you provide training depending on the product? What is it? But the answers were very, very slim. You too, if at this juncture you are not sure about the uniqueness regarding the competitive advantage or your competitiveness of your product, that is something that you want to look at. Because if you can't get that right, then this whole exporting thing, you're not, you know, you really should not be going in that direction just yet. All right, market research on the exportability of your product or service, most definitely, that's coming. You have to do that, and we'll be talking more about that on July the 18th, which is on our third session. And then, of course, your proven market entry methods. We are going to be delving into that on July the 4th, both for services and for products. This is an export myth that I wanted to put here. You know, my company is too small to be successful at exporting. Totally false. The fact is, to succeed in international markets, you don't have to be a big firm, right? Hundreds of Trinidadian firms and SMEs have been currently exporting and have been doing very well. What you need to be doing is really trying to understand your export markets, ascertain where you're at and what you need to do to put your company on the right path in order to achieve exporting success. So The answer is no, it is false. My company is not too small to be successful at exporting. You have instances where right here in Trinidad, where some products are developed specifically for exports. They're not really they're not focused on the local market at all. So think about that. Can your product or service find a worthwhile market outside Trinidad and Tobago? Answering this question is crucial. If there's no demand for what you're offering, it would be unwise to proceed. Yeah. So when analyzing the export potential of your products or services, you may want to account for the following. And we need to now take a look at assessing your export potential. And in terms of defining your product, because I've said quite a bit in terms of your product, right? When you're looking at defining your product and you're looking to examine it to see whether or not it's ready for an export market, these are some of the things that you would be looking at. Some of the unique features, you know, product distinctiveness, what makes your product different? And I sort of went through that. I sort of mentioned that just now, you know, whether it's cutting edge technology, adaptability in the new market, do you have a patent, some sort of technology that is attached to the product that can give you that competitive edge at the end of the day. With your product, you know, does the product require some type of training, right? Products that require training to operate place a greater responsibility on the distributor or agent that you decide to use in the export market. So you now have to be sure in terms of the criteria that you're developing for selection of the potential distributor, that they meet that criteria in terms of training that needs to be provided in terms of your product. And that is the same thing in terms of after sales servicing, after sales service, okay? Your customer profile. Defining the customer profile of the target market makes the approach to the market more assertive. So again, you got to, at a very basic level, you need to know your customer, right? In addition, the customer's profile has a direct impact on what they buy, and how they buy your product in the market. So do you know locally now, let's just turn the spotlight on Trinidad and Tobago in terms of your customers here, do you know who already uses your product or service? Is your product or service in broad general use or limited to a particular target group? Is your product or service popular with a certain age group? Very, very important for you to understand the demographics as it pertains to your product. Because the thing is, when you are looking at the export markets, is that same buyer persona or ideal customer profile that you have in Trinidad, can you transfer? Is that transferable into the export markets? Or is it that the product could be used one way locally, but can be used for a different segment of the market, or maybe even for a different purpose within the export markets as well? And then in terms of your product, what climatic or geographic factors affect the use of the product or service? If you're developing a product, let's say a product for Europe, for instance, you know, you may have to consider things like the weather conditions. Yeah, you know, they want to stay warm. It's 4-season weather. You know, these are some of the things that you have to take into consideration in terms of when you're putting that product together, when you're developing that product, and in terms of how you're positioning it for the European markets. We continue again, product modifications. The export firm, meaning you, may find a foreign market where you don't require any changes at all to your existing product, meaning that you can simply export the same product that you're selling locally into the export market. And that can be done, especially if we are looking at regionally in terms of you exporting versus extra regionally. Yeah, so within CARICOM, highly likely that you would be able to do that. In some instances, you may have to do minor modifications. If you're now looking at a country that is different language speaking, you now have to look at modifications that are due to legal requirements, such as the product labeling, the language or whatever it is dictated by the local culture, to ensure that you're able to capture a piece of the market, your market share within the market as well. And also to make it very easy for the distributor to sell the product in the market. Yes, special documentation may be required depending on the type of product as well. What is the shelf life of the product? Okay. Transportation, right? How easily can your product be transported? What transportation costs make competitive pricing a problem? With transportation costs make competitive pricing a problem? And that is a serious question. So for example, if you are operating in the construction industry and let's say you're selling roofing, and you want to get, you're selling roofing materials to, let's say, a country, a small island such as, Antigua, transportation costs to get it the container from Trinidad to Antigua may cost you a bit more. All of us may be aware that, transportation costs globally in terms of shipping, both air and ocean freight, was quite expensive. Right now, in terms of shipping from China to Trinidad, we are now back down to pre-pandemic levels. However, up to about 2 to 3 months ago, shipping from Trinidad to Guyana was almost the same price of the shipment from China to Trinidad. So these are things that are going to impact the overall cost of the product. It may make your product, non-competitive. And then you also have to look at the other costs that are associated in terms of, what the distributor is paying as well. And if you're also providing marketing services where you have a certain amount of money to spend within the export market to support the efforts of the distributor in order for you to get the sale in the market, all of these costs add up. So you have to ensure that your pricing is pretty competitive and it works for the for you here locally as well as in the export market. Local representation, as I mentioned before, from a market entry perspective, the easiest way to get your product into an export market is utilizing a distributor, a local salesperson, or if it is that you're a service provider, you actually have someone on the ground that you're able to partner with, form a strategic alliance with, that you can work with within the local market. These local people understand the market. They also, from a distributor perspective, he's going to receive the goods, the cost of the, he would pay the cost of the goods, in Trinidad, but then he will also be looking at accepting, any issues when the goods arrive in the export market. He will be handling that on the ground for you. He will be clearing the goods, retailing it or wholesaling it, and all of that. All right, so having someone on the ground in the export market is very, very important. Right? Do products require professional assembly or other technical skills? When you're selecting the distributor, as I mentioned before, you need to ensure that it factors in terms of criteria selection, so you've found the right person, right? And if, of course, after sales service is needed, it is a similar situation. Exporting services. So I just wanted to touch on that at this juncture. Services exports, as I mentioned, at the top of the presentation, is different to products. So exporting services, you have their specific questions that you have to answer, because generally the demand for services exports is growing all over the world, right? Even if you're primarily a manufacturer, you too may have some services attached to your product. And especially if it's related to your sector in terms of design, distribution, marketing, and logistics. So, but however, from a services perspective, you also have to ask yourself, does your company have the capacity to offer the service in export markets outside of Trinidad and Tobago? Yes, if applicable, does your company have the necessary intellectual property protection? So if it is that you are offering, I don't know, software development skills, animation skills, you know, whatever it is, consultancies in terms of training, any type of international certifications, all of those things need to be looked at. Does your company have the capacity and expertise to adapt its service according to cultural preferences or different standards in other countries? Very, very, very key as you look to sell your services abroad. Capacity. Will you be able to service the domestic market as well as the export markets? Because demand for your product, if you are looking at export market, the demand for your product is now in addition to the demand for your product locally. Do you have you know, a manufacturing operation, for instance, or products? Let's say products that you're importing that you're probably even reselling and then you're able to export. Do you have the capacity to do that and to service that export market well so that it grows and you're able to generate the kind of revenues, export revenues that you're looking for at the end of the day? So what do you need to put in place? So generally, basically what you need to do is an assessment of your, if it's manufacturing, you need to assess your manufacturing to see whether or not you can deliver. Yes, and if orders starts to come in, how do you treat with that at the end of the day? So do you have the storage facilities necessary? Do you have the capacity to store the packaging in addition to producing the product as well? So everything that I have mentioned in terms of assessing your export potential goes into your export plan, right? An export plan is a document that basically supports your business plan, but it just treats with the exporting arm of your business, right? If you do not have a plan, this export plan is your roadmap for exporting. I said this before, but if you do not have an export plan, you'll get nowhere in terms of your exporting. All right, exporting for you can then become very complicated. No planning means major failure. And you do not want to get into exporting without having a plan to guide you along the way. A good export plan begins at home. And it's, as I said, it's also as a part of your business plan. If you do not have a business plan at this point, or if you do have one, it may be at a point in time right now where you need to polish that existing business plan, which will help you to start to create your export plan. Or if you don't have the business plan, you may want to look at investing and getting that business plan off the ground. If you are looking at funding, to get funding to support your exporting activities, you may very well have to produce an export plan to support, you know, your application to the funding agency or to the bank or whoever the financial institution is going to be. So very, very, very critical for you to develop an export plan. And just to give you an idea in terms of what is contained within the export plan, and I will be sending a template for the creation of an export plan at the end of the series once again to help you guys in terms of your preparation for exports. So basically your products and services, your market overview, the key segments, the size of markets, what type of market entry strategy you're going to utilize, identifying your target markets, what the political and economic environment is like, you know, what is the purchasing process and buying criteria of your intended customers. Very, very critical. Sometimes that data is not available with you sitting here in Trinidad or doing research online, it may very well call for an in-market visit for you to do some ground research. And that in itself is a cost, so that cost will be included in the budget for exports that you're also developing. You can't have a plan, not look at the risk. Within the plan, there's also an implementation plan, because you're doing the plan, it means that you have a timeline in terms of when you are going to begin exporting, right? And of course, a financial plan. So in summary, what I have been talking about today, what we have learned is that international markets offer you access to new customers, revenue, and ideas. There are several benefits to exporting, and that includes, economies of scale, increased sales, new knowledge and experience, and of course, global and domestic competitiveness. We also would have looked at the challenges of exporting and, the key ones, the language and cultural differences. I think I would have mentioned that a number of times, and that is more so because of where we are. And, normally the first point of export for us is normally within the region, right? The paperwork, the accessibility as well. An export-ready business, let me say this once again, is one that has the capacity, resources, and management to deliver a marketable product or service on a global scale at a competitive price, right? Your first step is to think about the resources and knowledge that you have currently within your business, meaning that you have to assess your export readiness right now to see how you can plan forward. All right, assessing the export potential will also look at your product itself, the customer profile, what type of product manufacturing that you have right now within the company, and your legal and financial requirements in terms of your capacity. Exporting goods and exporting services present quite different challenges. And we would have mentioned that before in terms of, looking at customs, looking at physical delivery of the product, the packaging, whereas services, you're looking now at physical, a human, a person traveling to another country to deliver those services, or delivering the services to the export market virtually online, right? And of course, you're still going to have to look at the language and the travel, as it pertains to services as well. So if you want to start exporting today, I would be sending you a questionnaire where you can check your score that will put you on the right path in terms of you getting ready for exports. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I would like to say thank you very much, and I'm very much open to questions at this juncture.
All right, so thanks, Michelle. Folks, I've shared a post-workshop survey below, so that's how we know who attended the session, and that'll be the first ones we send the links to the workshop, the webinars, the recordings, the presentation, as well as all the other information. So Michelle, I know someone asked about if the recording would be shared. The recordings would be uploaded and shared. The links will be shared at the end of the series, so you can get that from there. But we do have a question from someone. I think that we may address it in the third session, or possibly you can give them a heads up, right? So the question really focuses on how does one do market research for the demand for their particular service without traveling. All right, I know we will touch a bit about it in the next session. I know in my past experience in terms of exporting, they always say it's best to go into the country and get on the ground rolling from there. But I guess you can give them a bit of a tip there.
Yes, but doing it without traveling, you can do the market research online. And also, let me just put in a plug here as well for Export TT. Export TT has a department that is called the Research and Opportunity Department. It is a department that was developed so that manufacturers as well as companies can reach out to them, and they will provide as much research information as they can on, based on the information that they have. So that is one avenue. However, I want to point out that they cannot provide you with market competition data, which is really, the consumer and buying preferences within the target markets. What we have seen in the past is that, let's say if you have family and friends within the jurisdiction, they can actually visit some of the competitors that you will probably find for the product online, visit those particular entities, and actually take pictures of the product online within the stores, so that, and then look at the positioning of the product on the shelf, look at the pricing of the product as well, and they can send that information back to you. You can then begin to develop your profile as it pertains to what is happening in the market versus what it is you have. You can also utilize, do your market research online, yes, but actually utilize different sites to get certain types of information. So the International Trade Center, I'm not sure if as an individual company you are able to get that kind of data. Export TT will be able to provide that to you, but you should be able to get certain types of data there, because one of the key things as it pertains to you entering the market and finding a partner, in terms of finding a partner, you need to conduct what we call due diligence on that partner. And that's a whole other session. But I just want to put that out there because it also forms part of the research. But I will touch on all of that.
And I guess a follow-up question. I guess you adverse to that. If I have a short time in a country, how is the best time to utilize what's the best way to utilize my time from that aspect?
From that aspect, if you have a short time in the country, what you need to do is do the groundwork from before you get there. So if it is that there are certain companies that you want to visit, you want to make that connection prior to you traveling, set up those meetings, secure the dates, ensure that when you get there, you are staying at a venue where you can actually have meetings with these potentials, and also for you to have transportation available for you to visit these companies in person, so that you can have discussions with them as well.
And you spoke in your presentation about choosing a local representation, right, as part of that. Is there any particular way that you can evaluate, okay, who's the best person that I should go to as a distributor or marketer in another country?
Yes, and I mentioned a few times about developing this, distributor selection criteria. Distributor management as it pertains to exporting is another area of things, but you can develop specific criteria. Like as a business, the sector that you're working in, you already know the kind of distributor that you would want. What is it, how much sales are they supposed to be generating? Do they have warehousing facilities? How many products are they actually distributing within their portfolio? Are they competing products with yours as well? What is their sales staff like, in terms of their fleet? Do they have geographic spread within the country as well? That means, how many locations do they have? How do they get the product out to the market currently? Can you speak to existing customers that they already have for you to get an understanding as to how they operate? And then of course, what in terms of the marketing of the product, what is their criteria, and can you meet what their criteria is? Or have you looked internally within your own resources to determine what type of budget you can have for sales and marketing within the export market as well? So, and there's a lot more that I can talk about.
I guess when you talked about, the export plan starts at home, right? So even in terms of thinking about a distributor in another country, is thinking about what are you looking for, right?
Exactly.
In the first instance. Right. So another question here is asking if there's any public data around top export products in the non-energy sector. And I know we always have a challenge in getting data in Trinidad. Right.
Let's touch that lightly. Again, I can't really say specifically in terms of Trinidad, but if you're looking at products, I'm not sure if the TTMA may have some information that you may be able to get a hold of. But you really and truly need to talk to people as well. In terms of gathering information on the ground. As a country, as a region, we are not that flexible in terms of providing information. And that is whether in person or virtually, it's just the way we are, right? But as I said, I was very happy with Export TT being, having this department as it pertains to exports, and it's not just exports in terms of goods, but exports in terms of servicing. So I will tell you that might be your first port of call to see what kind of research that you can obtain.
The next question speaks to the certification as around the fashion apparel. I'm not sure if you know anything in details about that, but on our fourth webinar, where we have the players in export, we are going to bring fashion TT there, so we can probably clear up that question there. So save that question, and we'll see you at the fourth session on July the 25th, and that's going to be at 10 a.m. And we talk about players in exporting. All right. So the other question was around, the Bureau of Standards. How does that come into play as a manufacturer when looking to export?
It depends highly on the product and whether a standard already exists for the product. It's also very important in terms of, importers, because there's a role that the Bureau of Standards play when you're importing products. But from an export perspective, the product that you are developing, the Bureau of Standards may be able to tell you whether or not the product is being made to a particular standard. As it pertains to exports. Now, I know on the reverse, in terms of you producing a product for sale locally, as well as potentially for exports, you can also make that contact with them. But it is highly dependent on the product. I can't just tell you off the bat, but it may be worth your while to actually give them a call and set up a meeting with them so that you can actually get information that is specific to you and your situation in terms of your product development.
And then you're thinking about looking at the Bureau of Standards in probably other countries as well, right? And getting that particular information.
Yes.
Right?
But sorry, let me just say something very similar. We're talking about Bureau of Standards in terms of product, but we can also look at intellectual property as well. And I want to encourage persons, sometimes we don't know, but we need to make ourselves aware as well. The intellectual property part of things as it pertains to your product, as well as maybe even your service, you need to reach out to the local IPO office. They are very, very, very good in terms of providing information. So please look at them. Also, they will guide you as it pertains to IP within the export markets in the region as well. So they are there. What I want to encourage you to do is to get an understanding as to what the agencies that we have locally, what their services are, and how they can help you in terms of getting what you want and having your needs met.
You're providing a whole checklist of a couple of things for persons to think about when they think about exporting. But I guess from your experience, is there any main thing that people tend to overlook and that they don't think that this is important? So they usually just run through this really quickly, but when they get into the exporting, they get into trouble. Is there any one main thing?
One main thing would be the actual competitiveness of the product. And some of us just attribute that just to simply sales. In time, it's doing well here, so I think it's ready to export, but we don't take the time to understand what the requirements are for imports of the same product into another market and what changes or product modifications may be necessary within those markets as well. So it's just a matter of market research, and ensuring that you know what the requirements are, the market entry requirements are for the product. Because there are certain goods in Trinidad and Tobago right now that it cannot get into Jamaica at the moment. Okay, and that is a CARICOM country.
I know we always have trouble with honey
Oh.
Really that from me. All right, but we won't touch on those subjects. So I guess,
Yeah.
I mean, for persons with, I guess, more perishable goods and those things, so someone is asking in terms of advice because they want to expand to export tilapia, right? Any advice or tips for someone looking to do those aspects?
No, I really don't have any information regarding fisheries. That is going to have that was another whole expertise as it pertains to fisheries and entry into other markets. There are going to be some market entry requirements for those things. One of the key things I want to advise persons as well is that you need to actually start talking to or get in touch with a customs broker, because a customs broker is going to have a lot of knowledge in terms of, getting these goods into the market. Actually, so much so, if you go onto the Ministry of Trade's website and you take a look at exporting goods, it's one of the things that the first thing that they tell you is to get in touch with a customs broker, right? So some of these questions as it pertains to logistics, it would be best for you to talk to a customs broker because it's different per product per sector at the end of the day. Okay.
I guess the final question before we close off, and folks, don't forget my survey link. Mary sent me this in case persons missed it, right? But final question, and as it pertains to today's session, how does a business know it's time to export?
How does a business know it's time to export? Well, I think I would have touched on that a little bit, but I probably didn't put it in those words. But the fact of the matter is, once you have a product that is doing really well from a sales perspective in the local markets, and that you have received inquiries internationally or from the region as to pertain to the product, and you find that, okay, I'm getting more and more inquiries about, having this product into another market, or you have also saturated the local market and you are looking to see how best you can transfer the success in the local market into a new market, that will tell you that you're ready for export as well. But at the end of the day, you need to have a very good product. And you need to have a product that's ready. Now, locally manufactured products in terms of exporting, you have to actually obtain what we call a certificate of origin, which is provided by Exportiti. And there's some criteria there that you also have to meet from a manufacturing perspective in order for your product to state that it is locally manufactured, so that it does not attract the tariff rates, meaning 0% tariff on entry. So it gives it a competitive advantage, a competitive edge, so that the distributor will want to accept your product because they don't have that tariff attached to it, like if it's a product that is international. All right.
So Michelle, thank you. Sorry, I didn't cut you off. Sorry.
No, you didn't. No.
I mean, thank you for the insights and today's session. We do have 3 other sessions. Let's letting you all know this, right? We have 2 sessions with Michelle again. The next session will be on July the 4th, same time, same place, right? Focus on entries into a new market. And then the other session is on the 18th of July, the importance of effective market research. And I think we got a lot of questions around from there. So probably we may not even get to do that session. But anyway, we'll figure out, right? And then our last session on July 25th, we're going to bring in a couple of the players in exporting to kind of talk about how do you go about exporting. So you're going to hear from some of the players in exporting there as well. So folks, thank you again for joining us, and I'll see you at the next session. Remember to fill out the survey. If you haven't used the link yet, probably click on the link so that you have it open, or save the link from there. For those who haven't completed it, we will send you an email just to make sure from there. But that is going to give us some valuable information in terms of how do we improve the session. If there are any questions that you have that wasn't answered, we're going to try to answer them as much as we're capable of, right? Or at least signpost to another organization who can answer that question for you, right? So, yeah, I mean, that's it for our end. Do have a safe and enjoyable, I guess it's the next 2 weeks before we see you again. And feel free to reach out.
Yeah.
Enjoy. And any last words, Michelle, before we close off?
No, I just want to continue. I just want to encourage persons to continue on that journey as it pertains to their export development. It's, as I said before, it's a long game, but you are in the right place to obtain information to put you on the right path so that you can grow your, actually get your export development to the next level. So thank you very much for your participation.
Great, folks, and thank you for the questions as well. Don't forget my survey, and let's plug that again. Right, folks, thanks for coming out. And we'll see you all at the next session.
Yes, okay. Bye, everybody. Good night.